cities across the country, the number of minority children, black and Hispanics, children that are being aborted versus being born, is coming dangerously close to the break-even point, if you will, if you want to use those terms. And this was all set in motion by the very person who started Planned Parenthood back in the 20th century, one by the name of Margaret Sanger, who was a noted racist and eugenist. She believed that you should control the population of undesirables, and certain undesirables should be weeded out of society altogether. And she was specifically mentioning that not only should whites control the black population, but if they weren't going to be enslaved, that they should be eliminated from the United States altogether. Now, there's no question. This is the kind of stuff that this woman actually wrote. You know, she wrote this, so there's no denying it.
Oh, I understand the history well, and I look at all the things that are going on, all the examples of violence. I mean, I would think that the minorities would be up in arms. I'm referring to things that have been talked and regurgitated several times, but Ferguson and Baltimore and all the situations, and I understand the anger, and I also understand. I mean, I've had my eyes wide open. I'm almost 60 years old, Rod. I grew up between being born in Memphis, Tennessee, and then grew up in Clarksdale, Mississippi. So, my formative years, the 1960s and 1970s, even though I was pretty young in the 60s, I got to see all the change. I was there. I was right in the middle of high school when desegregation came. And, I saw, you talk about classes. In Mississippi, I was in the minority because I was a middle-class kid. And there, all you had was rich white people and poor black people, and middle class almost didn't exist. But so I was kind of at an interesting point. But the original point I was trying to make is I understand that there are things worth standing up and worth fighting for. But my goodness, if you want to get angry, how about the near genocide? You start adding up. There have been more black babies aborted than were killed by a combination of the Klan, any war, any amount of slavery, even the Civil War. You add them all up, and we've aborted more babies than that, black babies, since the early 70s. I mean, that is something that I would think you ought to be up in arms, about as a group. Not you, because I know I'm talking to the coolest, most politically incorrect black man on the planet. But, I mean, this is the kind of information that, I could see people riding in the streets about demanding, especially when you find out that they're monetizing this. I mean, just how sick is that? They're not only performing partial birth abortions, but they're dissecting these children, these babies, who have no way to defend themselves. And you can't even blame the mothers because the mothers are knocked out. They're not even aware of what's going on. So,
yeah, when you can crush above, tangent,
but that was the subject what I called.
Yeah, when you can crush above and crush below, so you can keep the torso intact. There's something dubious going on there. And when you have more than, you might be able to dismiss one video. But when you have right now, and the rumor has it that there are more videos with other doctors from Planned Parenthood on these videos basically saying the same thing. But we have released 2 videos with 2 different Planned Parenthood doctors talking about this exact same thing. Now, maybe you can dismiss one as saying, well, they kind of misspoke. But when you have 2 or more, it's kind of like the Acorn thing. When there was a sting with Acorn in voting and other types of fraud going on, maybe one video with one Acorn office. Okay, they're a rogue element, sure. But when you start coming out with video after video with different people, well, now you can't dismiss it anymore. Now this is something that has gone into the realm of fact. And now you're going to have to start asking the question, and, did they break any laws? And my understanding is that the DOJ, as it is, because it's under Obama, is going to look into this. But this isn't the last we've heard of this. You know that this story is going to, if Americans really want to end this type of atrocity, that this story is going to carry over into January of 2017 when we inaugurate a new president. And that new president, especially if they're a conservative, they're not going to let this issue go. So even if the Obama administration doesn't get very far, somebody is going to get far with this. And, we may see a number of people who say that they were pro-choice begin to change their attitude. And we may start to see a lot of limitations, not an elimination of abortion, but some limitations on it. The Supreme Court said that, it's a woman's right to be able to have choice. They didn't say that you had the right or choice to do it in a late-term abortion or to do it for harvesting body parts, which is illegal. So now can we put some limitations on this stuff? And I talk to liberals a lot about pro-choice and pro-abortion issues, and I always say, you know what? I'm willing to compromise. Now, let me be clear. I believe that life begins at conception. No ifs, ands, or buts. It begins at conception. But let's just take a compromise here. Now, medical science currently tells us that, when there is no brain activity, you're brain dead. You're not coming back. You can be in a coma. You're never coming back. You're gone. You're done. You're off to the pearly gates or the gates of hell. You're done. So if brain activity equals life and the possibility and plausibility of life, and if we're going to determine that somebody's end of life is when there is no longer any brain activity, well, wouldn't it be logical to say that when you have brain activity in the fetus, in the womb, that is now a human being because it's now alive? And, I get them all the time when they hem and they haw. Well, you just agreed with me that end of life is end of brain activity. So beginning of life must mean beginning of brain activity, and you cannot take it away. So would you not agree then that if there is brain activity that you're now murdering your child? And some of them might, unwillingly agree, well, if you're going to put it that way, fine. Well, do you know when brain activity begins? Somewhere around the end of the first, beginning of the second trimester. So any type of late-term abortion from the beginning of the second trimester on is murder. Would you not agree with that? And, of course, they would always go back to, well, it's a woman's choice to do with her body. Well, what about the choice and the right of that unborn child to live?
Well, that it's our very first inalienable right from our Creator is the right to life. End of story. I mean, that's case closed. You really don't have to say much more than that. Arguing about when life is and when life begins. I'm like you. I believe it. Life is set in motion at conception, but you will find I'm not an unreasonable person. Most conservatives are not, and I even understand extenuating circumstances, incest, rape, things. But all of this can be taken care of, like you say, early, because if you can establish and accept that if no brain activity is the end of life, then the beginning of brain activity. That's a good way of putting it. And believe it or not, with that argument, Rod, you pulled me to the point past conception, so to speak. So you're on the right track, sharp guy. This is why I'm looking forward to working with you in the future. You're a very cerebral individual, but let me for a second, if you don't mind me hijacking 2 or 3 minutes of your show, let me jump to the base issue here. And the base issue here is that our federal government is completely and totally out of control. Show me anywhere other than the right to life, where in the Declaration or in the Constitution, either one, there's any mention that the Supreme Court should have jurisdiction over abortion or over marriage or over so many other things. My base point is our federal government in so many areas that we could spend hours and hours talking about it, they are completely and totally out of control. The Creator made man. Man came to this land. We formed states. The states then formed the federal central government, primarily for the purposes of protection. That was primarily what it was about. But just like the mafia with their protection insurances, now we've got a situation to where, do you see that the federal government, instead of moving, instead of staying where they were in that pecking order, that they have risen all the way to the top, and now they want to have say so over even the creators. So, I'm tired of the tail wagging the dog, and the people of this country are. The power in this country still rests with the people. It's an extremely simple concept, and it's something that a lot of people have lost sight of because they don't see evidence of it anymore. All they see is corruption, waste, abuse, more regulation, more, overreaching the boundaries. And a lot of people argue with me over Article 5 saying they're not paying attention to the Constitution now. Why would any new amendments to the Constitution, no matter where they came from, the way the first 27 that we have amended the Constitution, through the House and Senate 2/3, and then after the state for ratification, or coming from a convention of states, what difference is that going to make? Well, look for the common denominator here as to who has allowed the federal government to get out of control. And you better walk down the hall and look in the mirror if you don't have one handy, because it's me, it's you, it's anybody listening to the show. We, the people, have allowed it to happen. I wrote Common Sense 2, the Liberty Pledge. Through my last several years of doing things like the 1,000-mile March from Liberty, where I walked from Memphis, Tennessee to Washington, D.C., the truckers ride, all sorts of different things that I did, I was talking to people. And everybody, I say everybody, the majority of people would quickly agree that the federal government is out of control and it's got to be stopped. And then they'd say, but what are we supposed to do? Because the election cycles aren't working. 2014, evidence of that once again. And so that's why I wrote this piece, Common Sense 2, the Liberty Pledge. Like the first common sense, it awakes people to a problem. And then it gives you a tool, which is the Liberty Pledge, which is what the pledge is. It's a tool. It's a tool for we, the people, to use. Is it the only way that can be done? Of course not. But it is a uniting force. Any issues that you have with the federal government, federal overreach, things such as this, the Liberty Pledge isn't the answer, but it's the tool to unlock the answer. There we go, sir. Thank you.
And that is true. It is. Thank you very much for your call. We're going to be going into a break pretty soon, but let me just sum it up pretty quickly. Ernest, thanks for your call. Call back anytime. And I, too, by the way, look forward to working with all of you guys over there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, I think we just picked a lot of people's interest here. And unfortunately, can't tell you about it yet, folks. So hang in there. You'll learn about it. It's something great. Just trust me. But the power is in our hands, by the way. We have the choice of creating the type of government and society that we want. And like you said back in 2014, we had the opportunity to get rid of a major obstacle to our freedom, and we reelected, a numbskull by the name of Barack Obama. Unfortunately, that is the that we're going to have to live with it for another year and a half or so. But, it comes up quick, folks. I know we got to survive this year and a half through him, but you have to pay attention to your candidates because in November of 2016, we have the opportunity to begin to reverse everything that we have done to harm ourselves. And that means by electing, more conservative people to higher office, including the presidency of the United States.